Welcome back to Project Tug. On this week's episode, I'm going to be adding all of the hatches, latches and doors to the superstructure, starting to get the whole thing ready to paint. I've already drilled the holes for the portholes and I'll be fixing them in this episode. As you may have noticed, I've pressed on a bit with the wheelhouse as I really need to get that done to a certain degree so I can start working on how to fit the lights, as the navigation lights and internal lights are all going to be fitted in this. Off camera, I've also gone about the place and drilled a variety of strategically hidden holes, so I've got somewhere to run all the cables through. Anyway, let's get on with it. First thing I'm going to do is fit the portholes. I've already drilled out the hole ready for them. Excuse the hands, I've just got back from work. And simply a case of pushing the brass fittings into the holes, like so. Nice and easy. Let's get that out of the way. Then when it comes to gluing, I'm not going to put any glue on the front face as it would leak and make a mess. I'm just going to put a dab of glue, if the camera will focus, on the inside, and that should be enough to hold it. When it comes to adding the glue, these little bits here, it pays to use the smallest amount you can get away with, because if you use too much you end up making a massive mess. So I'm simply using the back end of the spreader, just put a few tiny dobs on. Once you've got the dobs on, if I can find my porthole, simply push it into place. And there we go. That should be more than enough glue to hold it on. Now with all the portholes done, it's time to move on to doing the hatches. For this, I've got hold of some very thin, I think it's maple sheet. No reason for picking maple other than it was cheap and the right size. Now, I've measured all of the hatches. These ones are going to be the ones I'm going to do first. These ones here, they're actually a lot bigger than what I've drawn on there. And I know they're going to be 3.5 centimetres by 3.5 centimetres. Now, with the 4 pieces cut out, it's a matter of sanding them down and looking at pictures of the actual ship. They've got rounded corners, so a couple of rubs on some sandpaper, just take off those edges. And that's all the central hatches cut out to size. I might need to hit a few of these with a little bit more sandpaper just to tidy up the edges. But I'm going to move on and show you how I'm going to do the hinges. For the hinges, simply going to be using a can of pop. Take the ends off, dissect it down, and what you're left with is a nice thin bit of sheet metal. Now, the hinges, I should be able to get a good run off of one piece. The edges were cut quite rough, simply because I was stabbing into a can, but hopefully with an X-Acto knife I should be able to get a nice smooth finish. If you're trying to use this at home, be careful as it's quite sharp, and as you can see has a bit of a mind of its own. Scrap the X-Acto knife. This, if it wasn't for the camera being in the way, it's actually a lot easier to do with scissors. So I'm just moving along. I'm going to make a load of these hinges in one go. And there's the first completed hinge. Simply wrap round, little drop of epoxy, and then once it's done, onto the hatch like that. And there's them once they're finished. At the moment they're drying. When they're dry, I'm going to go back and fix a few of the little errors on them. A few of the hinges need trimming and they need a bit more of a sand on a few sides. But while they're drying, I've been working away at a few of the side entrance bits. Nothing fancy, but sometimes you don't need to do anything fancy. Anyway, I'm going to press on doing a few more hatches. This has become quite an undertaking, and Yeah, I'm a good few hours in now. I wish I'd not decided to do hinges, but there you go. I suppose I've got to carry on with it now that I started. Thankfully, not all of the doors require little metal hinges to be made. Or I'm not going to do little metal hinges for all of them because I'm starting to lose my mind. Now, off camera, while the other stuff's still drying, I've bent one of these rope guides or whatever they are. I think they used to keep the rope off the superstructure. And the first one came out perfect the first time, so now it's time to botch one up on camera. So simply hold it up against the ship, mark the points you want to bend. That's where it's got to come to. There's one marked. There's the other bit marked. That's where the bend's going to have to be. So start there, bend, and then go down to this bit here and bend. Now the top needs to be narrower than the bottom, so I simply step back in a bit and then bend again, and step back in a bit and bend again. And now I've got slightly rounder tops to them. I have on one side. Let's get that one sorted. So it's a case of straighten them out, straighten them sort of back out. One side's worked perfectly, the other side hasn't. I'm probably gonna have a faff around without the camera in front of me and see if I can round them off now I know where the bends are. Anyway, carrying on. And sometime later, that's all the details done. I've just glued in the brass using some green stuff, and I've finally finished doing all of those hinges, which was a little bit tedious. Now what I think will wrap this episode up quite nicely is I'm going to take this away, sand down all the rough edges on the green stuff and other bits and pieces, and slap the first coat of paint on, and I think that will be a nice high note to finish this episode on. So I'll be right back, chaps. See you in a bit. That's after a first coat of paint. The details are really starting to look the part now. Sure enough, there's still more work to be done, and the details are a little bit rough. I don't expect to be winning any awards for this boat, but I'm really quite happy with how it's coming along. There's a lot more to do on it still though, painting wise. I need to weather it, and I also need to pinstriping around a lot of the hatches. That'll really make them pop. I couldn't resist adding a little life belt to the back, but I'll try and refrain from doing much more stuff like that off camera. But anyway, I think that's finished this episode on quite a high note. It's really starting to look like the TID it's going to become. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, have a good one.